Brad, I think we're good. I'll start with a quote. The first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn. And that's from Gloria Steinem. That's an old name from the past. So I want to say hello. My heart is happy to be here in person with actual real people. It's nice to be in a room with other people. I'm very happy about that.
We're happy you're here.
Yes. So I want to start off with a story. At the age of 40, Franz Kafka, who never married or had children, was walking through the park in Berlin one day when he met a young girl who was crying because she had lost her favorite doll. She and Kafka searched endlessly, but were not successful in finding the doll. Kafka told her to meet him there the very next day, and they would look for the doll together. But when they came the next day, they searched and searched, and they never found the doll. But Kafka revealed a letter that he had received from the doll himself. And in this letter, it said, "Please don't cry. I took a trip to see the world, and I will write to you about my adventures." And this began a lifetime of adventure and getting together, a lifetime story for this little girl and Kafka until the end of his life. During their meetings, Kafka read letters of the doll carefully written with adventures and conversations that the little girl loved and adored. Finally, Kafka brought back the doll, actually one he bought, and expressed that the doll had returned to Berlin. Well, this doesn't look at all like my doll, the girl said. Kafka handed her another letter, and in the letter, the doll wrote, "My travels have changed me." The little girl hugged the new doll, and she was happy and took the doll home with her and kept it. A year later, Kafka died. Many years later, the girl, now an adult, found a letter inside of the doll, and the tiny letter was signed by Kafka, and it said, "Everything you love will probably be lost, but in the end, love will return in another way." So the message here is to embrace change. It's inevitable for growth. And you can shift pain into wonder and love, but it's up to each of us to continuously and intentionally create that connection. Lovely story. Our themes for the month of March are open to possibilities. Our title today is Release and Let Go, and we do that so that we can be open for new possibilities. And we'll be focusing a lot on the process of visioning, the spiritual practice of visioning, but not the actual practice itself, but how the steps within visioning connect us to a higher vision that God has for us personally and how it can change us. Visioning is the process of opening up to the question of the highest ideal of our lives by asking God or Spirit to show up for us in a greater possibility. What can we know for ourselves? And we open up to what we call the impress of spirit, where spirit is actually impressing upon our mind what wants to be known in the moment. Or maybe you've heard the term, the greater yet to be. When we ask, when we open and allow ourselves to receive, we are tapping into that higher realm. It's a spiritual space of possibilities much greater than we can begin to imagine for ourselves. Now, one of the reasons it may be difficult for each of us to imagine a greater possibility for ourselves is because we don't always realize the baggage and the worry that we carry, that from experiences of our past, experiences that have caused us to unconsciously create personal judgments or boundaries or rules for ourselves. And do we really need the old baggage? Do we need the old rules and boundaries that keep us locked into an old version of ourselves? Well, here's a story about worry. Death was walking toward a city one morning, and a man asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to take 100 people," Death said. "Well, that's horrible," the man said. "That's the way it is," Death said. "That's what I do." The man hurried to warn everyone he could about the plan that Death had. And as evening fell, he met Death again. You told me you were only going to take 100 people, the man said. And Death said, well, I only took 100 people. Well, then why did 1,000 people die? I kept my word. I took 100 people. Worry took the others. Worry plays a very big role in destroying the quantity and the quality of our lives. Worry is and always will be a fatal disease of the heart. And when worry begins, we lose our faith. Worry signals the end of faith. So if we're worrying about stuff, what are we worrying about? What is that? That's baggage. The energy of baggage fills a very vital space in our unconscious that could be used for creating new experiences and bigger and better experiences for our life. And if we fully understood the power of forgiveness of ourselves and even these old experiences, it could be much easier to release and let go, to open the space to receive Spirit's new possibilities for us. Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith says that 100% of spiritual growth is in the letting go, releasing and letting go of ideas, beliefs, and attachments that no longer serve to create that openness and that spaciousness. It removes obstacles and impediments that are in the way of the vision. And it removes obstacles and impediments in the way. I just said that, didn't I? There we go. But it is the releasing and the embracing steps of visioning. That's where our work lies when it comes to manifesting that vision. So releasing is about making room for the greater good to be received and expressed, for change to take place, and also for healing. So releasing in the sense of our visioning is not based on what we choose to release or let go of. It's what's based on Spirit's highest idea of revealing what must be released, what's in the highest good to be released, to make room for a new vision and a new possibility. And since Spirit is always right here in us, as us, through us, it knows exactly what we need. So we're not choosing what to release. Our work is in the question, what needs to be released? And then all we do, our next step, is to be still. It's to listen to that voice within. It is to relax and release, and then let go of what no longer is needed. Now, this was my introduction. That was a long introduction. I just saw Willita's eyelids go boop. Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to repeat just a little bit of this, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just take a breath. And then I'm going to pause for a few seconds afterwards so you can actually summarize for yourself what you heard me say. So close your eyes. The steps within visioning connect us with a higher vision that God has for each of us personally. When we ask, open, and allow ourselves to receive, we are tapping into a spiritual space of possibilities greater than we can begin to imagine for ourselves. One of the reasons it's difficult for us to imagine a greater possibility is because we do not realize the baggage we carry connected to experiences throughout our lives that have caused us to create personal judgments or rules or boundaries. Baggage fills vital space in our unconscious that could be used for a new experience in life. If we fully understood the power of forgiveness for ourselves and these old experiences, it would be easier to release and let go, to open the space to receive Spirit's new possibilities for us. As Spirit fills our being with truth, we can relax, release, and let go of what no longer is needed. So, okay. In last week's talk, it was about living in the question. And Chris provided a great process for self-questioning when we experience something not so good by responding with a question. What are the infinite possibilities available to me now? How can things get even better than this? And sometimes I ask, what's the gift in this that I'm not seeing? I'm open to it now. And sometimes when life is crazy, when you say, what's the gift in this? But you'd be surprised where that takes you. It does lift the energy of it. Each of these questions creates a positive receptive space for something new to show up that was even better than what was happening. And we are affirming with spirit that we are willing and we want to know something better for ourselves. And this is where the spiritual practice of visioning comes in. This is where anyone who has, this is where, okay, living in the live version of a talk. There we go. Has anyone here not experienced visioning as it's taught by Michael Beckwith in the Centers for Spiritual Living? Have you all experienced that? You've not? Okay, so here's just a brief summary of what it is. We begin with meditation and prayer to get us to a receptive space, letting go of the outside world and moving away from the ego. And then it begins with a couple questions. The first question is, what is Spirit's highest vision as my life? The second question is, what must I release to be this vision or to make room for this vision? What must I embody or embrace to be this vision? And is there anything else that wants to be known for this vision as my life? And then we end with prayer of gratitude and a statement of commitment to the vision, and then release it into the field of possibilities, which is the law and the work of God. There really isn't anything mechanical we do at this point, because we watch, we listen, and we wait for our intuition and our guidance to put us on that path of the vision. We look for synchronicities. We allow universe to put the vision together, and the universe will bring us into alignment with the vision itself. It shows up in God's time for the highest good of our life. So this is just the sampling of the questions and the process. There can be more questions or less, and you can vision about something personal, you can vision about something global, or even a project. But our focus today is on the second question: what must be released? Release and let go. Ray Jordan, a practitioner who was the previous Visioning Committee Chair for the Centers for Spiritual Living, and she's authored the book, The Visioning Guide, says that all spiritual work is actually the process of subtraction. By releasing of the old ideas about ourselves and false beliefs of life. And when we do this, we welcome insights which reveal how to open to the highest good that can come in. We are always receiving inspiration and expansion energy from Spirit. The kingdom of God is within. That's what we teach. And we also teach by example that spiritual practices can help us get to that space of receiving this information. The practices of meditation, contemplation, journaling, and visioning. And with visioning, it is that question. And how do we get to that place of receiving? How do we do that? Many people have that ability to just listen to the guidance as it shows up, or they can get that gut feeling right away. They know that intuition when it shows up. Do you know people like that? I have friends, and sometimes I who get that all the time. And I'm thinking, am I getting it? Am I getting it? But in hindsight, I know I've gotten it because I've taken the right steps and things have shown up. But there's lots of exercises we can do to learn to feel that intuition and to recognize it when it comes. Doreen Virtue tells us that our angels are yelling at us even all day long, but they're trying really very lovingly just to get us our attention so that we can hear their guidance. Meditation for me is still my go-to. It's my basic exercise I do to raise my energy, raise my frequency, and get me into that space that allows me to receive and allows me to release. And it opens my mind so that I can get that guidance that I want to seek. There are many kinds of meditation. I like to sit outside with my feet on the ground, barefoot. And there's walking meditation for people who don't like to sit still. So there's lots of ways to find what we can do for each ourselves, what works for us, to find that connection to Spirit. I have some friends and relatives that say they cannot meditate at all. They just can't do it. Some people who do not have any sight or vision within. So we find what works for us when we want to get to that space. Visioning is a wonderful practice to do for that. So letting go. Letting go is not easy for some of us. Sometimes it's our ego actually that gets in the way, that nasty ego. And here's where we learn how important it is to be willing to let go of the ego's mind and its need to be in control. It has its own story of what's happening, what happened in the past, what's happening in the future, and what's going to happen next. It wants to keep control. That ego mind creates illusions of knowing what's going to happen, and it's based on fear and pain from past experiences. And it wants to control everything then, here, and what's going to happen. Our decisions become based on ego. Fear is the motivation for controlling what's going to happen. And it even decides even if we're going to let something take place. I know I've made changes or, some things in the past when I wanted to make direct changes in my life. And I get that little monkey mind, that voice in my head that says, hey, Lynn, we made a change like that before. How'd that go for you? We're like, hey, how's that working for you? And I think to myself, I'll never make a change like that again. So we just have to remember that that's the ego. And what's the difference between the guidance that comes in and that ego mind that wants to keep everything still? That ego mind might keep us in what's called a grid of illusion, which is a cycle of self-sabotage and usually has no connection to the truth, no connection to reality. If we can choose to disengage from this grid of illusion by aligning with our heart, the ego momentarily gets disengaged because the heart is the spiritual place of truth. So I want to talk about forgiveness now. I mentioned at the top of the talk that if we were fully able to understand the power of forgiveness for ourselves about old experiences and the choices we've made in the past, it would be easier to let go and to just release what no longer serves us and to be open. Our ego may want to step back in at this point with a few questions. Am I worthy of change that makes my life better? Am I worthy of a good life, of good possibilities? Am I worthy of God wanting me to do better than I've done so far? Am I even worthy of forgiveness? Well, the answer is yes, always. So can we look back on our life and allow forgiveness for the choices we've made in the past? Yes. Say yes and nod your head and take that in. Say yes. Yes. Okay. Can we allow forgiveness for ourselves for stifling our lives in certain ways? Yes. Yes, we can. Beckwith also says that not being willing to forgive ourselves is actually a form of self-abuse. Wow. Our emotions and our feelings have an energy of their own that lives inside of us and even creates its own chemical response within our body that leads to physical symptoms. A vibration is set up then that becomes a magnet to the universe and asking for more of what brings in that feeling. So if we're having happy, good thoughts and feelings, more of that comes to us in a variety of different circumstances. On the flip side of that, if we have negative, abusive thoughts and feelings, the universe will bring us circumstances that create more of that as well. And unfortunately, so much of this is unconscious, and we don't always realize why we're attracting repetitive, unhappy circumstances until we come to that moment where we say, hey, what the heck is going on? And I'm willing to look at my life. And then magically Science of Mind shows up. Well, for some of us, that would be good. But actually, this is where self-forgiveness is vital. And a simple exercise for self-forgiveness is the Ho'oponopono Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. 4 powerful statements. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. The basis for this forgiveness prayer is actually oneness. And there is only one, just as we teach. So when we speak this prayer, we are speaking into the field of one. of spirit, forgiving ourselves and even our part in another's experience and whatever that caused. And a fuller definition of oneness is that we are each the other person as well. Yes, we are of God. So each person is an individuation within and of the field of oneness. So when we forgive ourselves, we are forgiving another, and vice versa. When we forgive the other person, we are also forgiving a part of ourselves. Now let's take a moment to do this. Place your hand on your heart. And earlier I said that the heart was the spiritual place of truth. Now, pick a moment or an event in your life that you would like to forgive yourself for. Just quickly think of something. And I'll tell you what, even if there's something, if you have an event in your life that you don't think you deserve forgiveness for, that's something you're going to want to use this for at some point. So now with your hand on your heart, take a breath and feel that experience, if you can, in your heart and in your thought. And we're going to repeat the prayer 3 times. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Loving yourselves. At home, practice this forgiveness for yourself anytime something comes up in your thought that makes you feel bad or guilty, or you wish things had turned out differently. Set your mind in a meditative space or that spiritual space as you begin to have that feeling of the event. And then place your hand, hand on heart. And remember that thought plus feeling equals the demonstration as you repeat this prayer. And the effects may be conscious or unconscious, but the healing is big. Now let's return to visioning and the question, what must be released? We've opened that space. We have asked the question for a new vision, and now we must be willing to let go of a piece of ourselves. We've declared that neither ego or the past is going to make the choice for us. God is showing us what must be released. I loved the song that Willita and Del sang earlier. It was perfect for this right here. Now, releasing is a form of surrender. This is where we surrender. And even the word surrender is not easy for some people. But surrendering control and allowing a message to come into us and receiving is exactly getting that message exactly as it comes in is what we do. This means we're not changing that message that comes in any way that sounds better or in our own language or to feel better. We're going to get that message as it comes right in from the question, and we take note of it exactly as it is. Whether it's a picture, a word, a sentence, whatever it is, we write it down exactly what it is and as the response. It's God's language, and so sometimes it may show up as a metaphor. But we write it down, record it exactly what it is. The point here is that once you're willing to be in forgiveness of yourself and to understand the relationship of self-forgiveness and release and let go, whatever the response is for that question, your consciousness will know that you are willing to truly release what is appropriate and you're open to a new possibility. From Dr. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind, he says, the whole confusion of the world arises from fundamental errors of thought. Chief among these errors is a belief in duality. Remember the teachings of Moses that God is one. So, errors of thought are the limiting untruths about ourselves. Errors of thought, the limiting untruths about ourselves. If we really perceived and accepted oneness with God, our good with God, we would not have the baggage that comes up from negative and unlimited thoughts of ourselves and our past experiences. We would be receiving the great possibilities and the goodness of God all the time. So let's release those errors of thoughts that are limiting, that are negative, and that are untrue, and that no longer serve us. So, by participating in this discussion today, we've already planted a seed for self-forgiveness in your subconscious. So going forward this week, be aware of thoughts and memories that might come up during the day. They may come up while you're engaged in something else, while you're at work, or just while you're moving around. And make note of it if you can, and maybe journal with an image or a thought, and then take a moment and take that breath, go into that space, place your hand on your heart, and do the forgiveness prayer for yourself 3 times. And the closer you can do that to the memory itself, that's really good. But sometimes timing in the day doesn't always work for us. But whenever you can get to it, that's okay. But you'll be healing big things in your life and in the timeline of your life, past and forward and going into the present or into the future. So this creates that easier flow of release and let go for visioning and going forward into everything you do. And you've opened up more space in your life for new possibilities to keep coming in, because spirit is always flowing. One last quote from Dr. Holmes: "We must increase our receptivity, continuously extend and expand our comprehension. We shall declare 100 times a day, there is no limit to the good which is mine." So very good. Let's take this into prayer. And then we'll open up for discussion. So if you'll close your eyes with me for just a moment. I recognize right here and right now that there is only that one presence of light, of love, of divine truth, of divine wholeness. That one presence that is that divine that I call God, that I know that is in everything, everywhere, has created this moment and this every moment going forward. And as I know that in this connection, that as we are totally open, allowing ourselves to let go of what no longer serves us, the greater possibility for each step forward in each of our lives is filled with greater love and light and joy. Greater possibilities are always waiting to come in lovingly into our life, to show us where we can be, what we can be. So I allow right now that flow of the divine to continuously flow with each individual here, each individual watching, and into the heart of each individual everywhere, for all really truly is one in that heart of God. And how good that is. I give thanks for the seeds planted within this today from this experience of this talk and the vibration of the word. And so I just release this into the law that makes it so, into that work that is God. And I let it be. And knowing this together, we can agree. And so it is. Thank you.